Let's talk about something no one really explains well in dating. When someone seems distant, uninterested, or cool, but actually they're obsessed with you. We tend to think obsession always looks like someone blowing up your phone, showing up uninvited, or declaring undying love after 2 dates. But avoidants, they play a different game. They don't chase, they observe. They don't confess, they indicate. So today I want to walk you through 5 subtle ways an avoidant shows obsession without saying a word. They won't text you. They won't comment on your post. They might even be following you anymore. But somehow they know. They know where you've been, who you were with, what you posted, down to the time it went up. You didn't tell them, you've had no contact, and yet they're still there, silently orbiting your life. This is one of the most common and most confusing behaviors avoidants exhibit when they're emotionally fixated on someone. They'll never show their cards directly. Instead, they observe from a distance, watching your every move like it's their favorite show, one they refuse to admit they're still binge watching. This kind of behavior isn't about harmless curiosity, it's about control without vulnerability. For an avoidant, staying in the background gives them a sense of safety. They don't have to engage, explain, or risk rejection. But by keeping an eye on you, they're still connected. They maintain emotional relevance in your life, not through communication, but through silent surveillance. They might use fake accounts, mutual friends updates, or check your stories the moment they go up, even if they don't interact. Every view, every glance is a quiet way of saying, I'm still watching. I haven't let go. This creates a strange psychological tension. On one hand, they appear distant, maybe even indifferent, but their behind-the-scenes attention tells a different story. It's a pattern that gives them the illusion of intimacy without requiring them to show up in any vulnerable way. It also leaves you questioning your own instincts. You feel like they're still present somehow, but there's no visible proof. That disconnect can drive you crazy because their obsession is felt but never confirmed. What makes it even trickier is that this form of obsession is easy to rationalize away. Maybe it's just coincidence, maybe they're just bored, but consistent patterns like story views at odd hours, indirect online interactions, or knowing details they were never told all point to intentional monitoring. It's not accidental. It's strategic emotional closeness disguised as indifference. This behavior gives them a way to stay emotionally tethered to you without having to deal with the discomfort of actual closeness. It feeds their curiosity, soothes their ego, and delays the finality of a breakup or distance. For avoidants, watching you from afar becomes a coping mechanism, a way to keep you in their world while pretending they've moved on. But the truth is, obsession doesn't always knock on your door. Sometimes it just stands across the street, watching through the window. You haven't heard from them in weeks, no texts, no calls, no interaction whatsoever. You've started to accept the silence, maybe even told yourself it's time to move on. You finally begin detaching emotionally, and right then, almost like clockwork, they resurface. It might be a random, hey, how have you been message, a meme they know will make you laugh, or even a casual reaction to your story. The timing feels eerie, like they can somehow sense that you're slipping away. That's not your imagination. It's one of the clearest signs an avoidant is still emotionally entangled, but too afraid to admit it outright. Avoidants struggle with emotional vulnerability. When things feel too close, they pull away. But distance doesn't mean they don't care. It often means they're overwhelmed by how much they do. Instead of confronting that head on, they create space. They disappear. They shut down. But they never truly disconnect. In fact, while you think they've moved on, they're often waiting until they feel safe, waiting until you seem more emotionally neutral, or waiting until they sense that you might be slipping from their grip. Then they make their move. Not boldly, but just enough to test the waters. This reappearance isn't random, it's timed. There's often no deep apology, no emotional explanation, just something casual enough to keep their pride intact, but pointed, enough to reignite your emotional availability. It's a form of control masked as coincidence. It allows them to reset the dynamic on their terms without having to acknowledge their absence or take accountability for the confusion they caused. They want to reestablish emotional contact without committing to the vulnerability that should come with it. What's really happening is an internal conflict. They're still emotionally invested, but terrified of that investment, so they dip in and out, staying connected just enough to soothe their anxiety, but distant enough to avoid discomfort. That reappearance is them chasing reassurance without ever asking for it directly. It's them needing to know they still matter to you, not through a deep conversation, but through your response to their breadcrumb. What they're really saying with that message or that random pop-up isn't, I miss you. It's, don't forget about me. It's a quiet test. Are you still emotionally available? Are you still open? Do I still have a place in your world? They won't say any of that out loud, but the timing of their return speaks volumes. Have you ever noticed how someone suddenly starts sharing the same hobbies or interests you've talked about, but only after you mention them first? Maybe you casually say you've been getting into hiking, and then a week later, their social media is filled with trail photos. Or you start listening to a particular podcast, and soon after, they're posting about it too. This kind of mirroring behavior is one of the most subtle ways avoidants show their obsession without ever saying a word. Avoidants struggle with emotional intimacy, but they still crave connection. They want to feel close, but direct expressions of feelings make them uncomfortable. So instead of coming out and saying, I want to be part of your life, they do it indirectly by copying your behaviors, your interests, even your style. It's a subconscious way of signaling, I'm still here, connected to you. They create a silent bond, a way of syncing up with you without having to risk vulnerability or put their emotions on the table. This mirroring can seem innocent or even flattering at first. You might think, wow, they get me. And they do. But it's less about genuine shared passion and more about staying tethered to you emotionally. By adopting your interests, they feel closer without actually opening up. It's a safety, a way to bridge the gap without stepping fully across it. What's fascinating is how precise this can be. Avoidants aren't just copying randomly. They're tuning into the parts of you they find most compelling or significant. If you talk about something that makes you feel happy or alive, they want to absorb that energy indirectly. It's almost like they're trying to create their own version of intimacy by reflecting your world back at you. This kind of behavior also helps them maintain a sense of control. When they mirror you, they can pretend they're close without actually having to negotiate the messiness of a real relationship. It lets them stay emotionally engaged from a safe distance. And because they rarely admit what they're doing, you might not even realize this mirroring is their way of expressing deeper feelings. In the end, mirroring is a quiet form of obsession, a way for avoidants to stay connected to you without risking rejection or emotional overwhelm. It's their way of saying, I'm here, I care, but only on my terms. Avoidants often come across as emotionally distant or even forgetful when it comes to details about your life, especially the ones that seem important to you. They might brush off conversations about feelings or avoid making plans that require commitment. But when you mention something casually, something small and seemingly insignificant, like the name of your childhood pet, your favorite coffee order, or the band you listened to on repeat last summer, they remember. This selective memory isn't accidental. It's one of the quietest, most powerful ways avoidants show their obsession without ever having to say a word. This behavior might confuse you at first. You wonder, How can they forget my birthday but remember that random fact I mentioned once? The truth is that avoidants often protect themselves by appearing emotionally unavailable, but underneath, they're paying close attention to details because those details connect them to you. Remembering small things gives them a sense of closeness without forcing them to confront deeper emotions or vulnerability. It's like they're building an emotional scrapbook in their mind, piece by piece, one subtle detail at a time. Why do they do this? Because for avoidance, emotional intimacy feels risky and overwhelming. Big declarations or emotional conversations can trigger anxiety or push them to shut down. But remembering small details lets them stay connected on their own terms, a kind of low-risk investment in the relationship. It's their way of showing they care without having to say, "I'm invested," or "you matter to me," which might feel too exposing. What's more, these small details become emotional anchors. When life feels uncertain, or when they feel themselves pulling away, recalling these memories can remind them of the connection they're trying to protect, even if they won't admit it. It's a form of subconscious attachment, a way for them to hold on to you without risking their emotional safety. This selective memory also communicates something to you, whether they realize it or not. It's a quiet reassurance, a hidden message that they notice you, that you're not just another passing face in their life. It's their way of saying, "I'm listening. I'm here." Without any fanfare or emotional fanfare, this kind of attention reveals more about their feelings than any words ever could. So while avoidants might struggle to openly express their emotions or make grand romantic gestures, their ability to remember the smallest, most random details is a powerful sign of their obsession. It's an emotional thread that ties them to you, quietly woven beneath the surface. Avoidants rarely show their emotions openly, especially when it comes to feelings like jealousy. They're masters at hiding vulnerability behind a mask of indifference, sarcasm, or even humor. But if you pay close attention, you'll notice subtle shifts in their behavior when someone else enters the picture, someone new in your life. A date you mention, or even a casual friend you speak about with enthusiasm, their cool exterior starts to crack just a little. They may make a joke that stings more than it seems, or suddenly withdraw and become colder than usual. These small reactions are the avoidance way of showing jealousy without ever saying it outright. Avoidants are wired to protect themselves from emotional exposure, so admitting jealousy or possessiveness feels like losing control. Instead of confessing these feelings, they bury them beneath layers of detachment. Their pride often won't let them show fear of losing you, so jealousy becomes a hidden undercurrent, something that influences their actions and tone but never gets voiced directly. That's why you might find their responses confusing. One moment they act completely indifferent, and the next their words or body language reveal a flicker of discomfort or insecurity. This masked jealousy also serves a purpose. It keeps the avoidant safe from emotional risk. If they admitted how much they cared or how threatened they felt, it would open the door to vulnerability, and they do everything possible to avoid that. So instead, they express it through subtle behaviors, a cold text, a passive-aggressive comment, or a sudden withdrawal of attention. It's a way of saying, "I care more than I let on," while still maintaining distance. What makes this even more complex is that avoidants often don't fully acknowledge these feelings themselves. They might deny jealousy to you and to themselves because accepting it means facing uncomfortable emotions. This denial doesn't make their obsession any less real. In fact, it shows just how deep their internal conflict runs. They want to hold on to you, but they fear the closeness that comes with admitting it. When you see them pulling away after you mention someone else, or when their tone shifts in ways that feel off, take note. Those moments are their jealousy leaking out. It's a quiet, guarded way of protecting something they care about deeply, even if they won't say it. Behind that indifference lies a desire to possess you, not in a controlling or unhealthy way, but because they're afraid of losing the connection they've secretly obsessed over. Understanding these silent signals changes everything. Avoidants might never say, "I'm obsessed," out loud, but their actions, those quiet tabs they keep, the perfectly timed returns, the subtle mirroring, the little details they remember and the jealousy they mask, tell a story louder than words ever could. Recognizing these signs helps you see beyond the surface and understand what's really going on beneath that cool exterior. Thank you so much for listening and being open to exploring these complex, often confusing behaviors. I hope this insight helps you navigate your relationships with more clarity and compassion, whether you're the avoidant, the one loving an avoidant, or simply someone wanting to understand human connection on a deeper level. Take care of yourself, trust your intuition, and remember, sometimes the loudest obsession is the one that never speaks at all. Thank you, and goodbye for now.